David, one thing that I'm very, very proud of is that I did not inherit any money from my father. I built everything from scratch to where I am.
Hello beautiful people. In this first video, Aliko Dangote African billionaire is going to be sharing with us how he built his conglomerate from the very beginning, from the scratch to where he is today. So make sure you stay tuned and watch this video from the very beginning to the end, so that you won't miss any certain part of the knowledge in this video. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell, so that whenever I release another awesome content on entrepreneurship, personal finance, entertainment and education, you'll be the first to get notification from YouTube. Thank you. Let's go.
Dangote is widely known to be the wealthiest man in Africa. So is that a title you're proud to have, or is that one where you get so many people calling you for money you wish you weren't the wealthiest man in Africa?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, David. It's great to be here, and also seeing you today. Well, when they call you the wealthiest person in Africa, it comes with a lot of baggage. Of course, there are so many demands here and there, where people now come up with so many different, demands. But it is good because I'd like to give back to the society.
So right now you are involved in many philanthropic endeavors in Africa and elsewhere. Let's go through some of them before we go to how you actually made all of this money. So recently you had an event in New York, where we are now, with Mo Ibrahim, also a wealthy African business person, and Bill Gates, in which you provided a fair amount of money for the African Center in New York, in Harlem. What is the African Center and why did you do that?
Well, we did the Africa Center idea started with, Chelsea, Clinton, Hadil, Mo Ibrahim, and my daughter Halima. My daughter Halima joined them later, and we realized that, look, we need to set up this Africa Center. We need to make it a reality. First of all, for us to be able to project Africa in a better light, bringing Africa to the rest of the world. Especially when you look at, the third week of every September, we have the United Nations General Assembly, where the entire world converges in New York. And what we want to do is to tell the real narrative of Africa and tell the rest of the world what Africa is all about. So this is now to do with policy, business, and culture. Because sometimes, especially, Americans, they don't really understand much about Africa. Somebody will say, okay, well, both you Africans, what kind of language do you speak? For example, in Africa, we speak about 2,000 different languages.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
So right now, one of the big problems in Africa is health, and you've been very involved in trying to eradicate polio in Nigeria, along with Bill Gates and his foundation. What is the progress that you've made to date? I
think we've done quite a lot. The progress has been very, very tremendous. In the last 3 years, we haven't really had any wild, virus of polio. And hopefully, when we work hard between now and the next 6 months, by April, we'll be certified to be polio-free country, which means the entire African continent will be polio-free.
Now, one of the things you're doing in the philanthropic world is building a hospital in Nigeria. Why do you feel a need to build a new hospital?
I think we need to build a world-class hospital, because when you look at it, in Nigeria, we spend quite a lot of money, where a lot of people go abroad for medical checkup, for medical operation. Then what we are trying to do is to give that hope to the population and say that, look, you don't need to travel abroad. We will be able to treat you there.
Now, for those who may not be familiar with Africa, Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa. Is that right?
It is.
And it's growing at a very large rate in terms of its population. Is that?
Yeah, about 3%. Yeah, we're growing at about 3%.
So if at the current rate, at some point, more people will be in Nigeria than in the United States.
Well, by 2050, we'll be at about 450 million population, and I'm sure we will be way ahead of the States. We'll be about number 3 after China, India, and then it will be Nigeria in terms of population.
So by 2050, you could be the 3rd biggest country in the world by population, at the current population growth rate. So does that make you nervous about whether Nigeria can house and feed all these people?
It doesn't really make me nervous because we have massive arable land, we have a lot of water, we have the right climate. So when you look at it, the major contributor to our GDP in Nigeria is agriculture. So I think we just need to tilt a bit and change from the normal oil, reliant economy to agriculture and manufacturing.
So Nigeria is known as well for having large oil deposits. Is that a major contributor to the Nigerian economy? Is that the major source of wealth in Nigeria?
It's not the major source, but it contributes 90% of the foreign exchange, that we have, and we also the 60% of the government's revenue is also coming from oil. But I think the government is doing quite a lot to try and diversify the economy by trying to structure their own taxes, because we need to make more money from the taxes. The taxes, generation in Nigeria is a bit low. So I think government is working very hard to make sure that, yes, they adjust all these numbers.
As the wealthiest man in Africa and the wealthiest man in Nigeria, do you get pressure to run for political office yourself? Would you like to be president of Nigeria?
I think I'm doing a great job where I am right now, so I don't think I need to be in a political space. Some of us, we need to lead in terms of the trajectory of developing Africa through the business, not through the political leadership.
Let's talk about how you made this amount of money, which is by far the largest amount of money that any individual has in Africa. So you came from a wealthy family or not a wealthy family?
I came from a wealthy family. My late great-grandfather in the 1940s was actually the richest, West African. My late grandfather was one of the wealthiest Nigerian. The family name is Dentata. That's from my maternal side. My father too, was fairly rich, but he was both, in business and also in politics. But David, one thing that I'm very, very proud of is that I did not inherit any money from my father. I built everything from scratch to where I am.
So your father died when you were relatively young?
Yeah, he died when I was 8 years old.
So he didn't leave in his will a large amount of money for you?
Well, he left in the will, but whatever that I inherited from him, which means in assets, I gave that one to charity since then.
Okay. So did you go to college in Nigeria?
No, I went in Egypt.
Egypt, all right. And what did you study?
Business.
All right, so you graduated at what age?
I graduated at about 20 years old.
All right, so you went back from Egypt to Nigeria?
Yes, I went back, and then
what, did you get a job? What did you do?
I started work with my, uncle, but there's a few months, and then I went to Lagos, and now I started my own business by just, buying cement, selling. It was just a very low-key business.
All right, so you're 20, 21 years old, you're buying cement, you're a trader.
I was trading, yes.
You're not making cement, you're trading it.
I was trading at that time.
Now, cement is your main business. We'll talk about it in a moment, but why is cement such a big part of Africa's, wealth?
Well, the issue is that when you look at cement is what builds infrastructure. And we need a lot of infrastructural deficit. In Nigeria alone, we have about 17,000 deficit of housing. And it is all over in, Africa. So when we started cement in Nigeria, we realized that majority of it was actually imported. And that is why we went in there, we started, and it's a long story.
So you ultimately were trading cement, and then was it hard to get the money to keep that business going?
No, it wasn't really hard. At that time, I was buying domestically. We started importation in 1980 because I started business in 78. So by 1980, we started importing sugar, rice, commodities generally. And then we stopped the cement business because the cement I was actually doing local trading. It wasn't really import business. We started import of cement in 2000.
Okay, so you had a cement trading business. Somebody thought Lafarge may be buying it. You decided not to sell because they wanted control, And you then decided to build your own cement manufacturing business, is that right?
Yes, I decided in 2003 to build my own cement. That time Nigeria was only producing about 1.8, 1.9 million tons, but we went ahead and started with 5 million tons of cement capacity.
So what year was that?
This was 2000, and we started the building end of 2003 and we finished in 2007.
And so now you're the largest cement manufacturer in Nigeria?
We are the largest cement manufacturer in sub-Saharan Africa.
This is the core of your wealth and your company, but you're now building other things. So you're building a refinery in Nigeria. Why does Nigeria need another refinery?
Well, you know, David, let me give you a little bit of history. You know, what we do as Dangote Group, we use our businesses, like now we're using our current businesses to build the future of the, business. Like when we're in sugar, it was the sugar profit that we used in building the cement. Now with this cement, we're building so many things, you know, with refinery, fertilizer, petroleum products, and then we are doing also petrochemicals. With the refinery, your question is, okay, why are we building a refinery? When you look at the entire sub-Saharan Africa, you know, we have only 2 working refineries. One, it is in Cote D'Ivoire, which has only 75,000 barrels a day. The other one is by Sasol in South Africa. But majority of all these countries, almost all the sub-Saharan African countries, they don't have refining capacity. So all of them, they export their oil, but they import products. So we realize that majority of the foreign exchange spendings of Nigeria goes to petroleum products imports.
So Nigeria is exporting its oil and then it has to buy refined oil products back, import it, right?
Yes.
And what you're doing is you're building one of the largest refineries in the world?
It is the largest single line in the world. It's 650,000 barrels a day.
Sorry, 650,000 barrels a day of refining capacity. So to do that, do you have to borrow some money, or where did the money come from to build that?
Well, what we are doing right now, we are borrowing from the commercial banks. We are also borrowing some money from, some financial institutions like the, African Development Bank, the development banks, financial development, banks. We are borrowing from, African Exim Bank.
So many companies outside the outside of Africa would like to invest in Africa. Where do you recommend that they invest? In Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya? Obviously, you're probably partial to Nigeria, but are there good investment opportunities for non-Africans in Africa?
Well, there are good opportunities for everybody, and I think there's protection also for everybody. As we speak today, even foreign investors. Let me give you an example. In Nigeria, if I have a partnership with you that I'm investing, I won't have what you call minimum taxation. But if the company is owned by myself alone, as a Nigerian or Nigerian entity, we have a minimum taxation. So there's quite a lot in terms of inviting foreigners to come and invest in Africa. But countries that I can suggest for people to invest, one of them, of course, Nigeria. Ghana is a very good place to invest. Cote D'Ivoire, Kenya. Kenya is also a very good place to invest.
Now, I first met you a number of years ago when I was raising my firm's African investment fund, and you invested in it. And today, the bloom seems to be off the rose in African private equity investing. It was very attractive to many people 4, 5, 6 years ago. Today, it seems to be less attractive. Is that because the economies in Africa have gone down a bit, or what would you say is the reason?
Well, I think most of that reason, is to do with, first of all, lack of understanding of where to even invest. Look at the investment that we have made with you. I think I can say that 90% of whatever we invested in, we are doing very well. So I think it is where you should invest. Even myself as an African, I cannot invest in every single sector. So I have to be very choosy of where I invest. and there's a lot of wrong perception. People read stories from newspapers and they believe what they are reading. But I think as we go along, there are quite a lot of changes in most African countries to try and change in terms of focus on the economy.
Now you live principally in Lagos, is that right?
Yes, I do.
And how many people are there in Lagos?
In Lagos today we have about 25 million.
25 million people?
Yes, in terms of population. I know it's a very small...
So getting around in Lagos, which I've tried to do, is not that easy. Though getting around in New York's not that easy either. But for example, when you get around, do you have like special police cars that take you around? How do you get around Lagos?
Well, I get around in Lagos. Sometimes I have police escort, but not all the time.
Okay.
Over the weekend I drive myself.
You drive yourself?
Oh yes, I do. I drive myself.
And people stare at you and say, "There's the wealthiest man in Africa driving himself"?
They do sometimes when they recognize the person driving. Yes.
So do you go to a restaurant by yourself? Do people come up for selfies or they ask you for money?
They don't really ask me for money, but even here, anytime when I go to places, to either eat or to, I get a lot of requests for selfies. For yes, it's normal.
Now, you have some outside interests. One of them, I think you're interested in what we call in the United States soccer, but other people call football. So the Arsenal team, and is that a team that you would like to buy someday?
It is a team that, yes, I would like to buy, someday. Well, what I keep saying today, we have $20 billion worth of projects. And I think that's really what I want to concentrate on. I'm trying to finish building the company, and then after we finish, maybe sometime in 2021, we can...
so you're not buying a team right now?
I'm not buying Arsenal right now. I'm buying Arsenal when I finish all this project, because I'm trying to take the company to the next level.
What are the attributes that you think you have brought to the table which make you successful?
I think the most important one, number one, David, if you are going into any business, you must understand the business A to Z. You must know that business.
So in terms of Africa itself, generally, are you bullish on Africa's prospects as a place in which people can invest, private equity firms or industrial companies to invest?
I think I'm very, very bullish when it comes to Africa, and it is the main reason, David, today why we have $20 billion that we're investing all at a go, which will finish by end of next year, first quarter of in the next 2 years. Let's say in the next 2 years. I'm very, very bullish in Africa. We have done very, very well in Africa, and I can tell you, if we continue with what we are doing today, based on our own projections, we'll be able to be within the next 5 years in the Fortune 100.
Now, from time to time on some television networks, I see advertisements for Dangote.
Yes.
For your company. Is that just general brand building? Why do you advertise, let's say in the United States, the Dangote brand? Because most of your businesses are not in the United States.
Well, it's a brand building, and like what we have planned to do, we are not going to remain dominant only in Africa. We are going to invest outside Africa. Because what we are doing right now, we are investing, yes, mainly in sub-Saharan Africa. But if you look at what we are building today, we have a company that has revenues of $4 billion. In the next 2 years, we'll have a company that will have a revenue of about $30 billion. So with that, we'll have quite a lot of money. What we are trying to do is to use major part of that money and invest outside Africa, and maybe 40% of it to continue to invest in Africa, because we have invested very, very heavily now.
So you're in your early 60s.
Yeah, I'm 62 now.
62, well, that's pretty early 60s. So do you intend to keep doing this for 10 more years, 20 more years, 30 more years?
Let me not commit, but I think I will maybe work for the next, at least, very active in the next 15 years.
So let's suppose somebody's watching this and say, I want to be like Mr. Dangote, I want to be a successful businessman in Africa. What are the attributes, or anywhere, What are the attributes that you think you have brought to the table which make you successful? Is it intelligence, hard work, persistence, all of those things? What would you say are the most important attributes?
I think the most important one, number one, David, if you are going into any business, you must understand the business A to Z. You must know that business. You shouldn't just go and invest because somebody now will say, okay, hey, you know, there's good money in cement, then you go and jump into cement. You have to understand the business in and out, and that's the difference with me. I know my business in and out. You can wake me up any time and ask me about fertilizer, ask me about anything that we are doing. And the other one is really to work very hard, and you have to have the tenacity of continuing to, you have some hiccups here and there, but you have to be focused in terms of what you are doing.
Now, I've known you for a while, and I never seem to get you to yell or scream, or you seem very low-key. You don't use this technique of yelling and screaming at people, or you're just very low-key and even-keeled. To what do you attribute that, or am I wrong?
I think, no, you're not wrong. That's my nature. I'm very quiet, and I'm very, very calm. I get upset sometimes when people try to be, either to outsmart me, or I don't like people who will not tell me the truth. I always like people to look at me through, and tell me the truth.
So are you investing any in the United States?
We are going to start investing, in the United States just after this project. We want to open a family office, both in New York and in London. We already have an office in London which has been operating for the last 30 years. Okay. So we want to turn part of that, as a family office, so that we can diversify the wealth. As you know, I've discussed this with you before, where sometimes in Africa you have issues of devaluation. So we want to really preserve some of the family's wealth.
Right. Now, sometimes wealthy people, they collect art, they collect cars, they collect other things, or some of your wealth that you're not using for philanthropy, what do you do with it? Do you collect? Are you a collector of things, or?
I'm not really a collector of arts. Anytime when I have excess money, I like to put more in terms of charity. Okay. I don't really have very expensive lifestyle.
And the great pleasure of your life is just building your company and then giving away extra money?
That's my greatest pleasure in life.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, it's a very good success story, and I know a lot of people wanted to hear how you've done it, and I guess you're saying it's hard work and persistence, a little luck maybe from time to time.
Luck, definitely. Luck must be there. If there's no luck, you won't be able to make it, of course.
Well, thank you very much for coming today, and I appreciate your giving us your insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David.